When we get into midlife, sometimes we find that our priorities start shifting. And one of the most radical things that can happen, or maybe that needs to happen, is that you find the power in not centering romantic relationship in your life. And this can be difficult because of the programming that we've had, and the way that society has made us believe that that is where a tremendous amount of our value and purpose lies. And that is what I want to talk about today, is how much power you have in decentering relationship and what that can look like in the real world. So if that sounds like something that you may have been called to or thinking about, or maybe even something that you've never considered, this is going to be the video for you. Welcome to Sacred and Bloom. My name is Natalie, and I'm a women's transformational coach. I work with women in midlife who are wanting to have more freedom, more joy, and just a better sense of who they are and what they want, and becoming empowered in this part of their life instead of invisible. So thank you for joining me, whether you are coming back or whether this is your first time hanging out with me. I'm just so glad you're here, and let's get into it. So first I want to talk about cultural conditioning. So when we're little girls, what do we grow up on? What do we grow up on? We grow up on fairy tales where the princess has to be rescued, where whether that's Rapunzel or Snow White, or there's so many of the stories. I mean, we grow up on, at least in the Gen X generation, I mean, I feel like things are better with current or more recent Disney movies. Like Brave is great. She's not necessarily stuck on her value, and her identity are not centered on whether or not she gets married or finds a partner at least by the end. And so, but it used to be, at least in my generation, the Gen X, that we grew up on, like I said, like Snow White, and like you have to be chosen, you have to be rescued, and that your whole purpose as a woman is basically like getting the man. There's never, like, at the end of even in The Little Mermaid, her whole story arc is making herself less than she is to get the man. And once she gets the man, once the marriage, that's the end. There's nothing after that, because that's supposed to be the pinnacle. In my own life, I have been waking up to the fact that I have been pouring my energy, my drive, my love, my passion, everything into my relationships, into my romantic relationships, and somewhat into friendships. And that's less of an issue, I think, but still something to consider. I think sometimes we get in this place where society is rewarding us for being desirable, for being chosen, for being partnered. Like, that's when you have the most value, right? And so that's where we put our energy. And at least in my life, something that happened for me is in centering my romantic relationship in my life, and my energy, and my time, and my gifts, we're all going to one person. And sorry, I'm shaking my desk, getting all excited. All of my gifts and my energy were going to one person. And part of why I started my channel is because I believe that I have so much more to give, and so do you. than to just one person. I found that I was doing all of the emotional labor. I was tremendously over functioning. I I think a lot of my self-worth was tied up in whether or not this my romantic relationship was meeting my needs, was I being desired, was I being cared for, was I, and I think I was like chronically dysregulated because I was chasing safety. I was chasing safety externally from my partner, from my love relationship, instead of finding that within myself, instead of creating safety within myself, instead of meeting my own needs, looking at my own needs. Because I think as women, we tend to, again, we get rewarded for putting our needs last, whether it's with, I mean, we have to do that to some extent with children, right? But with your partner, that should be equal. And there are some relationships where that is the reality. There are also many relationships where men have been trained by society to expect that they're going to be put first and you're going to do all the things and whatever. And we are also trained as women for that same thing. But then we do it for 10, 15, 20 years, whatever, and we figure out like, gee, this sucks. I'm exhausted. Where are my dreams? What happened to my goals? Why have I been supporting this other person? And I don't want to get too much into a religious conversation here, but I do want to say that a lot of us who grew up being raised in that, having that religious piece of, women being kind of made to serve men, that is a religious piece that I think can really mess with us and is meant to control us to some extent. And I'm sorry if that offends you. If it really pokes you in your stuff, maybe sit with that and think about how different your life would be if you had not had that programming. Just a thought. And there can be a lot of things about religion or about the religion that you choose, whatever that is, none of my business, but there can be a lot of things that serve you and that work for you. And there can also be things that don't work for you, but I think a lot of people have a hard time with like, well, all of it has to be true for any of it to be true. And that's something that we all have to work through on our own. But anyway, I want to get back to, I don't want to get too much into that piece, but I did want to name it. So I want to talk about the power of decentering relationship for women specifically. So when you figure out that you deserve the energy, the time, the attention, the love, care, patience, when you figure out that you deserve all of those things that you are giving others, something starts to shift. And when you reclaim your time, when you reclaim that energy, when you reclaim your power for yourself, I'm not saying that you need to completely shut people out. I'm not saying that you completely need to stop doing nice things for your partner or stop prioritizing them in any way. I'm saying when you take a look at where you're overfunctioning, where you're overextending, where you're doing too much of the labor, be it emotional labor or, if there's an imbalance in what you're doing around the house or whatever. And you look at that and get real honest with yourself about what you deserve and how you would feel if some of those things shifted into a better balance. You would have more energy to go after your passions, to share your gifts with other people. You are not here to be an energy source for people who refuse to A, do their inner work, or B, give to you in a way where you are honored. Like, there should be reciprocity. You don't have to lean over into someone else this far. That's not where your wholeness is. But we get told that we're whole when we're in relationship. No. If you take the time to look at the stories that you tell yourself about what lights you up, what makes you whole, what your gifts are, and who deserves those gifts, and when you take time to think about those stories you're telling yourself, about how much you are reaching for someone else to meet you when you're not taking the time to really meet yourself. You're wanting intimacy. And by intimacy, I don't necessarily mean physical intimacy, although that may be true. For me, that was true. But when you're wanting that intimacy and you're reaching and you're reaching and you're reaching, but you don't have that intimacy with yourself, with your needs, with your values, with your body, with your purpose. You might be prioritizing one person. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be prioritizing them at all. I'm saying that there needs to be maybe like some leaning back and making space for that other person to lean in for you. You deserve that too. And so what does this look like in the real world? This means that you start prioritizing friendships. This means that you start getting in touch with your creativity apart from your romantic relationship. It means maybe you go take an art class. Maybe you start painting in the afternoon. Maybe you start doing things that light you up during times when maybe you find that you're over functioning for someone else. So part of the process, at least part of this process for me, was noticing, how I'm feeling in my body when I'm doing something for someone. Because your body is an incredible, finely tuned barometer, meter, whatever you want to call it, that will tell you when you're overgiving. It will tell you when you're doing too much for someone. It will tell you when you're out of balance. Okay? You're going to feel it in your body. You're going to feel tense. You're going to feel exhausted. You're going to feel maybe some resentment. You're going to feel maybe a little overwhelmed. You're going to feel maybe even anger, right? But as women, we're not allowed to be angry. We're not allowed to rage. And maybe reclaiming that as part of your journey. It was for me. So again, the process is when you're doing things for your partner or for this can be not just your partner, but in other relationships, maybe with your parents, or maybe you have a friend that takes and takes but doesn't give. What you need to find the places where you have imbalance, because honestly, if you're doing it in your romantic relationship, chances are you're probably overgiving in other areas of your life. It's worth taking a look. And if you're not partnered, you can still be doing this. And so in that, it becomes looking at yourself and figuring out, how am I prioritizing myself and how am I filling my own cup, right? And so I think that for me, once I started decentering my romantic relationship, it helped give me permission to live more in my purpose, which is service to something greater. I realized, and I think I said this already, but I'm just going to say it one more time. I realized that I was pouring all of my goodness, my gifts, my love. I was pouring all of that into one person. And that is not, and for me, not a healthy thing. And I want to say this to you if you need to hear it. You have so much to give. You have so much to give. You have so much, there's so much more to you than being in relationship, in giving to someone else. There's so much more. And sometimes you have to decenter relationship. Even maybe you have to lean a little farther out, and then maybe you can kind of come back to center, right? But give yourself space to figure out who you are when you are not overfunctioning, when you are not overgiving to that person, when you are not meeting all of their needs without meeting your own needs, or without getting your needs met, or without communicating to them what you need. Or maybe you're communicating to them what you need and it still isn't happening. And you can tolerate that, or you can start to meet your own needs. You can consider that maybe this isn't the right relationship for you. I don't know. But I do know that let's talk about what this doesn't mean. Let's talk about what decentering your relationship doesn't mean. I'm not telling you that you have to divorce somebody. I'm not telling you that you have to, again, like, stop prioritizing them or stop considering them. That's not what I'm saying. This also isn't about rejecting relationship and just being single forever, although if that's what you want to do, that's your choice. I think that there is growth that can only happen. There's personal growth that can only happen in relationship. And I think that we also, in many ways, are, there is enjoyment in sharing life, sharing experiences, sharing adventure, sharing growth with someone else in a romantic way. But it doesn't have to be that. But so what I'm getting at is, decentering relationship does not mean completely rejecting love or intimacy. It's more about making you the center of your story, not someone else's fantasy, not for someone else's approval, not for someone else's validation, and learning how to validate yourself, how to meet your own needs, how to hold strong boundaries. If you know anything about attachment theory, if this is resonating for you, you may lean anxious attached. And if that's the case, you may get into this place in your mind where you think, well, if I don't do all of this, if I'm not doing everything, I'm going to be abandoned. And the work is to stop abandoning yourself. And for me, a lot of that really clicked into place when I stopped centering relationships, particularly romantic relationship. You can heal that part of you by, like I said, stop abandoning yourself. Start holding strong boundaries around what you need. I did a boundaries meditation. If you go to my guided meditations list, it's in there. There's a boundaries meditation to help you with that, if that's something you struggle with. That's a skill that you can learn. And so you, at your core, may have a tremendous fear that if you aren't a good girl, if you're not doing all the things for people, if you're not constantly hyper aware of everyone else's needs, that they're going to abandon you. But there's another piece there, at least for me, and maybe you resonate with this, that I created, I'm going to say that past tense because I think I'm getting to a place where I'm not doing that anymore. At least I'm trying very hard not to. You create safety for yourself by managing everyone else's feelings, by managing and meeting everyone else's needs, by being so hyper aware of your environment that you are constantly, you're co-regulating your partner. You're looking at micro facial expressions and going, oh, are you okay? Are you mad? Because you're trying to maintain safety. And it's exhausting, babe. If you're not exhausted by now, I feel like I was exhausted for 15 years. So if that's not resonating, then don't take that. But you can create safety for yourself, inside yourself. You can teach yourself to be safe, to feel safe, even when the person you're with is not validating that for you. And I don't mean safety like not causing physical harm. I mean, obviously that's important, but I'm more often it's about safety in terms of, am I feeling secure? Am I feeling like I don't need to worry right now? I had an experience of being around someone who relaxed my nervous system in a way that I had not experienced before. And it gave me a whole new outlook on what safety can feel like. And I need for you, if you want to, I need for you to start listening to your body and start taking charge of your nervous system. And what I mean by that is, if you are constantly stressed out, if you are constantly overwhelmed, if you are constantly overfunctioning, and you can feel that in your body, right? When you do that, when you sense that, when you feel that, there are things you can do to give your nervous system safety. You had to source that from your caregivers when you were little to survive. Now you are a radiant, gorgeous, powerful feminine. And you have the sovereignty and the agency and the ability to create safety for yourself from within. You can learn that. You can do it. And that little part of you that starts to freak out when you feel like this person might abandon you or you aren't safe, you can speak to that little part of you and let her know, you know what? You don't have to drive the bus anymore, babe. I've got this. And you may have to tell her that or comfort her every day, every week for a while. But eventually, you're both going to figure out that you actually do have this. And she is going to start to feel safe because you are holding boundaries, because you are prioritizing your needs, because you are prioritizing your sovereignty. And what's amazing is when you do this for yourself, we're told, don't be selfish. Good girls aren't selfish. Good girls put other people first. Or good women, whatever you want to say. You put good wives, good whatever. Put other people first or are selfless. That's rewarded. We're encouraged to be that way. But what happens when you start to come into your sovereignty and you stop leaning so far over into someone else's space by trying to manage them and meet their needs and doing all the things, over-functioning? Two things happen, two possibilities. Either your romantic relationship becomes healthier, it becomes more reciprocal, it becomes more grounded. You become more grounded for sure because you're no longer sourcing your validation and trying to get your partner to meet all your needs. What a relief for them. That lets them show up in a new way. If you're constantly managing someone, you may be making them feel like they're broken or like they're a project instead of a partner. And you may not even be doing that on purpose. You're trying to control. Oh, sorry, I keep messing with my camera. You're trying to control. You're trying to have control by managing them. And in your mind, you may be thinking, oh, I'm not trying to control him. I'm trying to give to him. I'm trying to take care of him. I'm trying to meet all his needs. But the reason you're doing it, potentially, is not completely from a selfless place. And you have to get really honest with yourself about that. Because you may find, if you really dig into that you may think that you're doing those things out of a selfless place. But if you're doing it so that your body can relax, so that you can feel safe, so that you can feel validated by your person, you are doing it in a less selfish way than you believe. Just putting that out there. You may want to journal about that and sit with that. Because your relationship is going to be so much healthier. Or, I said two things. The second thing is that person who got so used to you over-functioning, overdoing, overgiving, taking care of everything, managing them, doing all the things, when you stop doing that and pull back into a more balanced place, they may not feel compatible with you anymore. And that can be really scary. Because that triggers your abandonment. Oh, shit. They're going to leave. If I don't do all the things, they're going to leave. That might be the best thing for you both. Because especially when you get into midlife, when your cortisol and your hormones and everything is all messed up, I have a bunch of videos about that if you're interested. This becomes untenable. this overfunctioning, it becomes untenable. And you need to be able to take care of yourself. You need to step into this place of sovereignty. And when you do that, you can't be afraid to change or grow. You can't keep yourself small just because the person you're with is, because you're afraid that you'll outgrow them, because you're afraid that they won't keep up. You have got to make your peace with that. And you've got to trust that either they are going to meet you or you're going to have to part ways. And is that terrifying? Yes. Sit with it. Sit with the discomfort of that. And believe that you deserve someone who can meet you, someone who can show up, be present, make you feel safe. And by that, I mean, I just talked about sourcing your own safety. And that's important. I just want to be clear. You need to source your own safety. However, you also need to be listening to your body when you're around someone who you're in a romantic relationship. If you constantly feel tense, if you constantly feel like you're scanning them for danger, that is not a supportive relationship. You should, most of the time, you should feel calm. Your nervous system should be in a state of relaxation, of calm. They should not be triggering your fight or flight on the daily. Listen to your body. Okay. This is getting really long. Let's close it out. A couple things. I pulled a card today from this deck, which I love. It's an oracle deck. I just felt called to pull a card before I started. And the card that came up was the Phoenix. See if I can get it to focus for you. The Phoenix. You may be at a point in your life where, in order to become the next version of yourself, the happier, more joyful, more empowered, the person who gets her needs met, the person who feels seen, the person who feels safe, in order to step into that new version of you, you may have to light the old you on fire. You may have to burn some shit down. Don't be afraid to show up for yourself in a way that allows your becoming. Take a look at where you are over prioritizing someone else at the expense of your own growth or of your own wholeness. Who are you when nobody is watching? What does she want? What does she need? Maybe sit down and write a list of the things that you want for yourself outside of partnership. Who are you outside of partnership? If that's a short list, babe, please give yourself permission to be more, to expand, to love yourself in new ways, to let other people see your light, not just one person. So I recognize that not all this is going to land. I'm trusting that it's going to reach the people who need to see it. And I want to invite you to, if this is the first time you're seeing me, like, subscribe. That helps my channel, and I would love to see you again. This is the kind of content that I produce. I also do a lot of guided meditations, because this work, you can't do it all in a cerebral way. And I'm going to be adding a lot more somatic movement videos. So I want to be addressing your nervous system. I want to be helping you repattern your subconscious mind, because we can't think our way through everything. The reprogramming of some of this stuff is so old. In my journey, it has taken kind of a multi-pronged approach, and that's what I'm sharing here on my channel. And my intention is that that is for your highest good. And that, like I said, that the women who need this, find it if it shows up in your feed. And I would love to invite you to the Patreon community that we're growing. I have all of my meditations there without ads. And then I also have a lot of things that I'm working on over there that I don't share here. So if you want to join a community of women who are also doing this work and wanting to feel supported in that way, you don't have to do this alone. And just know that I am so proud of how far you have already come. And I really hope that you rise into your fullness. We need you. Thank you for being here. And if you made it this far, know that I am sending you so much love. I'll see you in the next video.